everybody. Mike Levin. May 16th, 2017. Tuesday. Coming up on 9 a.m., heading into the office. And I thought I'd do a video today to capture my beardless look. No, actually to talk a little bit about the phase I find myself up to in my career of SEO, an always evolving field, even in the best of years, and currently undergoing interesting evolution as a result of a process that kicked off in around 2009 to clean up the cesspool of the internet, as Eric Schmidt had said to a room full of magazine publishers, and then proceeded to put Google's resources where his mouth was. And that led to Penguin and Panda and the incorporation now of that into their real-time algorithm tweaks, which are a little more bursty than the real-timeness we were led to believe, as the recent Fred update that went aggressively after advertising driven, primarily deceptive websites. Bring people in with any content on a topic, run some ads, make some money, and rinse and repeat. And that is one of the major contributors to what Eric Schmidt referred to as the cesspool of the web or the internet, because it's hard to identify them. It's very thin lines of demarcation between spammy ad-driven sites and legitimate ones from good publishers who are publishing with, well-researched, with journalism and, quality and a little dedication of resources behind it. Like in the old days of paper publishing. It's almost too easy to publish these days on the web, and anyone can jump into the game, and people who had a fair amount of technical savvy and could kind of reverse engineer in their mind what Google was doing had a very unfair advantage over those who couldn't, even if those who couldn't were major publishers. And so Google has been, fine-tuning their processes over the years, much to the chagrin of people who were profiting on being able to manipulate the, shall we say, more juvenile behavior of Google. In fact, I might go as far as to call it infant's behavior. And without going all too sci-fi on this, we now have systems that will never be shut off. There's not going to be a flipping off of any switch for Google. And the systems that run it are layered upon each other. It's no single one system. It's a whole network of systems that is synchronized and coordinated and improving. Right, so, and that's just one of the many systems on this planet like that. So whether or not you believe in the singularity and all that stuff, you probably need to believe that the Google process will improve, right? The steady progress of technology capabilities, it might not be exponential like it used to be, that drove Moore's law, where processing power and memory doubled for the same price every year and a half. So that's held up pretty steady since the rise of personal computers like the Commodore 64. You compare that to the phones in our pockets today, and the difference is stunning on a sci-fi scale. Things that people like Arthur C. Clarke would have firmly categorized as sci-fi is what we're living today. We might not have the space elevators yet, but what we're doing with digital electronics is quite astounding and unabated. So just based on those improving resources, Google's processes will improve, and it will become harder to fake it, but at the same time it becomes easier to publish, so Google's challenge grows. So what we're seeing is this improvement going through phases of growth that would be very similar to, say, an infant becoming a toddler, becoming a child, becoming an adolescent, and someday, maybe in our lifetimes, an adult. I personally don't think my generation will be around to see what these systems are, evolving into, because, your typical Google Doc is going to outlive you now. But we will see the vastly improving processes, and so those of us in the industry of bringing information to people, publishing, there are various businesses there. There's the subscription-driven model like Netflix and such, where the reliable income exists to do programming, TV programming, and a certain level of artistic integrity that's provided because the subscription model guarantees that income even if you initially dissatisfy your audience.
I don't think so. I think you probably
having to pay for radical content comes far later down the line with the subscription model, because what are people going to cancel their Netflix subscription because there's one series they don't like? And then there's the ad-driven model, where the advertising that and commercials that runs with the media is what pays for the media, pays for bringing it to you. And then, of course, there's everything in between on that spectrum between subscription and advertising driven. And then there's other models out there too. It's probably more like a 4-quadrant grid, but you don't even have to complicate the discussion by talking about the other axes. The only one that's needed is subscription versus ad-driven, and Google itself is an ad-driven media. And the thing that keeps people coming back to it is the satisfying user experience of that they experience when they use it, when they Google. That plus the brand success that keeps Google getting installed as the default search engine on so many browsers, and switched to the default search engine even if it's not set that way initially. In fact, the whole model of search has to be turned upside down in order to, slip anything other than Google in on a user, such as happens with Siri on the Apple phones, when you don't get a data-driven, an API-driven result coming from, like Wolfram Alpha or one of the US government databases or such, then you get it from a general web search, and usually Microsoft's Bing. So there are attempts to sort of change the game, but almost everything out there that, gains any traction is just copying Google in one way or another, or cutting so many deals that it just keeps sliding in on the fresh Firefox installs on the fringes, DuckDuckGo. Although I don't object to alternative search engines, we in the business make our money by dealing in the large center of the distribution curve. And the distribution curve has most people using Google, unless you're in Russia or China, but we're not. So anyway, evolving field of SEO. I've tried to get out of the field in the past, but what else am I going to do? This is what I know. So just keeping track with the changes is what's necessary. But with things evolving at this level, which is, nothing less than machine learning and the dawn of artificial intelligence. I mean, I wouldn't call it artificial intelligence by any stretch of the imagination, but we're certainly at the dawn of some serious machine learning on systems that never get turned off. What's a humble little SEO working on the ad-driven side of publishing going to do in that situation? Well, the answer is improve your tools, improve your skills, become, truly master at a new set of data tools that can help find correlations and do data investigations and answer complex questions, and to basically get out of the testing which way the wind is blowing SEO of ages past, where many people who called themselves SEOs had the technical capabilities to build some systems maybe and to make some investigation tools on the net, but I'd call them first generation investigation tools, or built in such a highfalutin way and being priced out of accessibility to the average person, so really having no real significance, or SEO bullshitters, right? So there's a real clear divide in the industry. There's probably a whole spectrum in between, but I was one of those technical builders, and I built this thing called HitTail, based on the premise that there's always something nearly working for you. And if you identify that, you have a real-time striking distance report, so you just adjust the focus of some old piece of content or publish a new piece of content with more focused subject matter, and you seize the first page of search on that particular topic, whereas you didn't before. That's a rinse and repeat process, by the way. So I invented that in 2006. So that's over 10 years ago, and it is still going strong. However, it is nonetheless one of the first generation SEO tools of yesteryear, and I'm thinking about tomorrow. I'm thinking about today. And so what I need to do is to master Python. Python is the language, let's call it the lingua franca of tech. From 2017 forward, which is what I predict is the date or the year when Python surpasses Java and all other languages as the primary preferred language to pick up when anyone starts a new project. Because why would you do otherwise? Unless it's one of those outlier type projects that requires the, over-the-top optimization that C can provide. But even then, you can flesh out your project in Python and spot optimize those parts in C. So there's really no excuse for Python not to be the first thing you pick up. Some people need the Java runtime engine in their process for some perception of security or portability that brings, but take the same project, implement it in any JVM language, Scala, Clojure, or whatever. Implement the same thing knowledgeably in Python, I'd add, because many people use Python as if it were C, ignoring such things as yield generators and decorators and all this wonderful stuff that Python brings to the picture that makes it so flexible. And alternative runtime engines that get rid of those final arguments. Runtime engines that get rid of the global interpreter lock that allows such elegant C integration and Fortran-like number crunching behavior, right? Everyone likes to put down the GIL, but you got NumPy because of the GIL, and because of NumPy, you got Pandas because of Pandas. All the scientists in the world are jumping on the Python bandwagon because the Continuum IO people realize that, or the Jupyter Notebook, it's like perfect storm. Jupyter Notebook makes Python accessible. Anaconda makes Jupyter Notebook accessible. every popular host operating system, including Linux, makes Anaconda accessible. And now suddenly, all these complex dependency problems, that was the main issue with programming, expressing yourself through a machine language rather than a spoken language, doesn't have a virally spreading aspect to it. There is too much, you gotta do this, you gotta do that, get things get things just right. And everyone knows that the answer to this is virtual machines. It's been around since like the dawn of operating systems and computers. Not a lot of people know this, but the success of the C language and Unix is precisely because of that. Internal virtual machines, by whatever you want to call them. There's a lot simpler ways to think about it. It's just the lookup tables between the machine code of two different processors and ways to adapt from one to the other when their basic operations vary. That has to be virtualized. But when you're virtualizing something like a Python kernel on a host operating system, everything gets so simple because Python takes care of all that little bit. And I'm probably going a little too technical now, but the point of all that is that all the advantages you get out of most languages, you can get out of most other languages. That's any Turing complete language can do what any other Turing complete language can do. So the difference is in the details, and the details have to delight. They have to make it pleasant. They have to make it an environment you want to go into. It has to be the environment you need it to be, multiple environments. It needs to be applicable to almost any problem that arises. You need a small set of tools that can address a very broad set of problems. And you need to be able to express yourself in that programming language supernaturally, almost as if you're speaking English or some other spoken language. And this is where, what's going on today in, Python programming and data science is breaking off or varying from the more computer science-driven activity around the world of programming from the years of, before, because there was a certain way to go about things, to be doing it the proper way. Every computer science student learns these things, and it has a lot to do with, isolating components from each other so that they're loosely coupled, so that you can connect things together in new ways, so that you never program yourself into a corner. Object-oriented was one of those big revolutions in tech, but over time you realize that is just one way of looking at the world and solving problems, and not always the best. So whole languages are factored around concepts like object-oriented, and if it's not the right way to think about your problem, you've programmed yourself into a corner just based on your selection of language, right? So what you want is something where almost everything is a flexible variable about the runtime environments, the type of hardware you're running on, the kind of programming methodology you might choose to take up and use, how much machine level optimization you're going to require, and have what you already learned already immediately 80% applicable to your problem. And that's what I found in Python. And I find it to be the recurring secret weapon of making my transition from the world of SEO to the world of data science, where I have to be. And in addition to that, I got a bunch of books to read, which I know what they are now, thanks to Chris Albon, I believe his name is, who is one quarter now, I forget exactly how many people they're up to, of a podcast called Partially Derivative that I like to listen to. And yeah, I guess with that, I will wind up here. Thanks for joining me. Hope to talk to you soon. And don't forget to subscribe.